I'm Anastasia. I welcome you all to this new session of Fundamental of Nursing. So, in our previous session, as we have started with a new unit that is a vital signs, we've discussed in detail, right, about what vital signs is, about the four measurements that is the body temperature, the pulse, the respiration, and the blood pressure, right? We've also discussed about the guidelines while we are assessing the vital signs of the patient. So, in today's session, we are going to discuss in detail about body temperature. So, what is temperature? In simple words, temperature is the measurement of heat which is expressed in degree, right? So, temperature will reveal how much a substance is hot or cold, right? It is through this temperature that we will get to know, we will get an idea about the heat which is present in the body, and this heat will also be expressed in degrees. So now let's move on to the definition of body temperature. So what do you mean by body temperature? Here, body temperature is defined as the balance between the heat which is produced by the body cells and the heat which is lost from the body tissue. So this is what body temperature means. Okay, it is defined as the balance between the heat which is produced by the body cells and the heat which is lost from the body tissue. Now let's move on to the physiology. Okay, so we will be talking about the physiology of the body temperature. As we all know that the body temperature is of two types, the core temperature as well as the surface temperature. However, from these two, the core temperature is the most important one. Why is it important? This core temperature is important because it includes the temperature of the deep tissues, okay, including the temperature of the cranial, of the thoracic, as well as of the abdominal cavity. So this core temperature, since it includes the temperature of the deep tissues, that is why this core temperature is considered more important than the surface temperature. However, the normal body temperature, that is the surface temperature, will vary depending on the time, on the place, and in whom this body temperature is being measured. So as I've said that this surface temperature depends on the place, on the time, and on whom it is being measured, right? Whereas the core temperature is most important because it includes the deep tissue, no? So here our body has the regulatory system that helps to keep this core temperature normal. However, this temperature may vary depending on the heat which is produced by the body and also depending on the blood flow. So since we have our normal body temperature, that is 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, so here our body has its own regulatory system that helps to keep this core temperature normal. Okay, but however, sometimes it may vary depending on the heat which is produced by the body as well as depending on the blood flow. So here, because of this, if there is any fluctuation in the body temperature, if the body temperature is higher than the normal level or lower than the normal level, 37 degree Celsius, okay, where Celsius will be denoted by C, and 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, where Fahrenheit will be denoted by F. So what is this C and F? This C and this F is a unit which is used for measuring the heat inside the body. So let us review this physiology. As I've said that our body temperature is of two types, that is the surface and the core temperature. And from these two, the most important one is the core temperature. Why? Because it includes the deep tissues, that is the thoracic, the cranial, as well as the abdominal cavity. Whereas the surface temperature is the one which will vary, depending on whom, on the time, and in which place it is being measured. And also, as we know that our body, that will help to maintain this core temperature. However, sometimes this core temperature may vary depending on the heat which is produced by the body as well as depending on the blood flow. So since our normal body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, or we can say 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. So if there is any fluctuations, if the body temperature is higher or lower than the normal level, then this will serve as an indication that something is wrong with the body, okay? And here 37 degrees Celsius, okay, Celsius will be denoted by C, and 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, where Fahrenheit will be denoted by F, is a unit which is used for measuring the heat inside the body. So here there are four ways through which you can assess your body temperature. It can either be done orally, it can either be done through the axillary, through the rectum, as well as through the tympanic. So through which mode you assess the body temperature, it has its own normal value. Okay, so here if you assess the temperature of the body orally, then the normal value will be 98.6 degree Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. However, if you assess it through the axillary, then the normal body temperature will be 97.6 degree Fahrenheit or 36.5 degrees Celsius. And if you assess it through the tympanic, then it will be 99.5 degree Fahrenheit or 37.5 degrees Celsius. And the last route or the last way through which you can assess is through the rectum. Okay, so when you assess the temperature of the body through the rectum of the person, then the normal temperature will be 99.5 degree Fahrenheit or 37.5 degrees Celsius. So in order for you to be able to make a good judgment about the body temperature, it is very necessary that you must know the normal value through each and every mode you try to assess the body temperature of a person. So that is what physiology of the body temperature is about. Now let's move on to the next one, that is the heat production. So here we are going to see how is the heat produced inside the body. Here, the heat is generated in the body cells through the food metabolism. The body will convert the energy which is supplied by the metabolized nutrients to the energy from which it can be consumed by the body directly. So one form of this energy is the thermal energy, which is used in order to regulate the body temperature. And also this thermal energy is measured in terms of heat. So here what I basically mean is that we all know that heat is generated in the body cells through the food metabolism, right? So here the body will be converting this energy which is supplied by the metabolized nutrients to the energy from which can be consumed by the body directly. And also thermal energy is one form of the energy which is used in order to regulate the body temperature. And also this thermal energy is expressed in terms of heat. And also this thermal energy is measured in terms of heat. This type of heat liberated is also expressed in terms of the metabolic heat and will be measured as the BMR, that is the basal metabolic rate. So here mostly the heat will be produced by our deep tissue organs, okay, such as the brain, such as the liver. However, there are certain parts of the body which also serve as a heat insulator, that is the skin, the subcutaneous tissue, as well as the fats of the subcutaneous tissue. So here what it basically means is that mostly the heat which is produced inside the body is because of the deep tissue such as the liver, the brain. However, there are certain parts of the body which serve as an heat insulator, that is the skin, the subcutaneous tissue, as well as the fats of this subcutaneous tissue. So here what happens is that when the heat is generated through the body cells, when the heat is generated through the thermal energy, and also when the heat is produced by the deep tissues, in case if this heat in the body rises, then the hypothalamus will be transmitting the impulses in order to reduce this body heat by triggering perspiring, by dilating the blood vessels, and also by inhibiting this heat production. And in case if the heat production is less in the body, then through vasoconstriction, that is the narrowing of the blood vessels, through muscle shivering, and also through piloerection, then this heat will be produced more in the body. So this is how this heat is produced in the body. Okay, in brief, I can review by saying that as we all know that heat is generated in the body cells through the food metabolism, right? So here this body will be converting this energy for which it can be consumed directly by the body. And also there's one more energy that is known as the thermal energy, right, which helps in regulating the body temperature. So even through this thermal energy, as well as because of the heat which will be produced by the deep tissues inside our body, this will help to produce the heat in the body. However, if there's increased heat which is being produced, then The hypothalamus will then transmit the impulses which will serve as a signal in order to reduce this body temperature by triggering, perspiring, dilating the blood vessels, as well as by inhibiting this increase body temperature. However, if the body temperature is decreased, then also through the vasoconstriction, through the muscle shivering, and also through the piloerection, the heat will be produced in the body in order to maintain that normal body temperature. So since now we've got an idea of how the heat is being produced in the body, right? So now we are going to look on how heat can be lost from the body, because as I've said, that body temperature is defined as a balance between the heat produced and the heat lost, right? So it is very important that we get an idea of how the heat is produced in the body as well as how it is lost from the body. So here the heat is lost from the skin surface to the environment by the process of radiation, convection, conduction, as well as evaporation. So how can heat be lost from the body? By the process of radiation. Here radiation means the loss of heat in the form of infrared rays. And here in radiation, there is no physical contact that occurs, right? So here, even when the skin surface is not in contact with any other surface, this heat which is produced in the body will still be lost. It will be lost from the body in the form of an infrared rays. And the next one is conduction. So here in radiation, as we have seen that even though our body is not in contact with any object, still our heat will be lost, right? But here in conduction, what happens is that some other object will be in contact with our body, and this is how the heat will be lost from the body. And here the object which is in contact with this body will be cooler than the body surface. That is why the heat will be lost from the body to that particular object. So for example, we can see hydrotherapy, or even while we are providing a sponge bath to a person who's having a high body temperature, in this way, because the body or the skin surface will be in contact with an object which is cooler than the skin surface, right? This is how the heat will be lost from the body. And the next one here is the convection. So what do you mean by convection? Convection means the movement of heat away from the body surface. So in order to get a clear understanding of what this convection means, let me cite an example. So for example, the weather is too hot and you have been walking on that hot weather, okay? So as soon as you reach your room, what is the first thing you will be doing? The first thing that you will be doing is you will be owning the fan and you will be sitting down, right? Why? Because through the use of fan, it will enhance the heat to lose from the body by air, right? So here convection means the movement of heat away from the body surface, right? So through the use of any external object that will help you to enhance the heat which will be lost from the body through air, then this process is known as convection. And the last one here is vaporization, which means the loss of the water from the body in the form of vapor or gases. So I hope you've got a clear understanding of what radiation, of what convection, conduction, and vaporization is. Okay. So since we have discussed about heat production, since we have discussed about the heat loss, next we will be discussing about the regulation of the body temperature. The process of regulating the balance between the heat loss and the heat produced inside the body is known as thermoregulation. And since this thermoregulation is very important, why? Because it's very important to maintain the balance between the heat loss and the heat produced, right? So here our body system has three main parts. That is the sensors in the shell, then the integrator in the hypothalamus, and also the effector system. So what happens between these three parts is that the sensors in the shell will lead to the integration of the hypothalamus, which will then lead to the effector cells to balance between the heat which is produced in the body as well as the heat which will be losing from the body. And as we know that most sensors are present in our skin, that is why you might have experienced it that our skin detects cold efficiently rather than warm. So as I've said that our skin detects cold efficiently, right? So during the winter or the cool season, our skin usually becomes cool, right? So in order to maintain this body temperature, there are three physiological processes that start in order to maintain this thermoregulation. And these processes are shivering, sweating, as well as vasoconstriction. So how can we maintain our body temperature through shivering? When the weather is cold, or when you feel that your body is not warm, then you will start to shiver. Why do you shiver? You shiver because through shivering it will help you to increase the body temperature. It will help you to increase the heat production inside the body. And also, as we have discussed, that vaporization is one process, okay, that helps in the heat loss, right? So here in the cold season, or in the cold weather, you will be finding that you will not be sweating. Why? Because sweating will be controlled in order to decrease the heat which will be lost from the body. And then vasoconstriction, that is the narrowing of the blood vessels. So here, when you are feeling cold, or when your body is not warm, then vasoconstriction will occur. Why? Because this vasoconstriction will decrease the heat which will be lost from the body. And then moving on to the next, that is the hypothalamic integrator. This hypothalamus, which is present in between the cerebral hemisphere, plays an important role in controlling the body temperature. Why? Because this hypothalamus detects even the minor changes that occurs in the body temperature. Here, the anterior portion of the hypothalamus as well as the posterior portion of the hypothalamus is used in order to control the heat loss as well as the heat production in the body respectively. So what happens is that as soon as the nerve cells in the anterior hypothalamus becomes heated beyond the threshold, then the effectors, that is the impulses, are sent out in order to reduce this body temperature. So how will it reduce this body temperature? It will reduce this body temperature by sweating, by vasodilation, and by inhibiting the heat which will be produced inside the body. And also along with this, as I've said, that even the blood flow plays a major role in increasing the body temperature, right? So here what happens is that the blood will also be redistributed to the superficial vessels in order to enhance the heat loss. However, an opposite reaction will occur in case of cold weather, or in case when your body is cold. And then the next one here is the behavioral control. Our behavior also plays a role in regulating the body temperature. Why? Because when we are being exposed to extreme temperature, then the thermoregulation will depend on the following factors. The first one is the degree of the extreme temperature to which we are being exposed. And then the next is the client capacity to have a comfortable or an uncomfortable feeling about the temperature to which she or he is being exposed to. The next is the emotions of the client, and the last one is also the activity level of the client. So here, depending on our activity, depending on how active, how independent, how well we are able to remove or to put on clothes, this will help us regulate our body temperature. However, this activity of the client will vary from one person to the other. Why? Because if it is for us, if it is for adults, where we are independent, where we are able to take care of ourselves, then what happens is that when we feel that we are feeling hot, we can remove our clothes, right? When we feel that we are feeling cold, we can put on sweaters, jackets. But if it is related to the infants or to the young ones who doesn't know how to really take care of themselves, then this will not be possible. That is why it is said that our behavior also plays an important role in maintaining our body temperature. So now here we have come to the end of this session. So in today's session, we have discussed in detail about body temperature. I have taught you about what body temperature is, about its physiology, as well as how the heat is being produced in the body and how the heat is being lost from the body. And at the end, we've also discussed about the regulation of the body temperature. So I hope you guys have got a clear understanding of this topic. I'll be meeting you guys in another session whereby I will be discussing about what are the factors that can affect the body temperature, as well as how you will be able to assess your body temperature. So until then, have a good day. Thank you.